All right, welcome back once again, everybody. I'm Don Seifert. It's the Dr. Tree Fruit and Don podcast. It's Friday, June 14th. I am here with Dr. Tree Fruit herself, Dr. Kari Peter. Say hi, Kari.
Hello.
Dr. Greg Krawcheck. Say hi, Greg.
Hello, everyone.
And Dr. Shan Kumar. Say hi, Sean.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so Kari, you've got a couple points to make. You've got there's a comment period coming up here shortly, so I'll let you go first.
Yep. So we'll start with that. So right now, the EPA is soliciting comments for several fungicides. The top three right now are ziram, thiram, and ferbam. And actually, there is a round one for captan, but I won't talk about the captan at this moment in time. So it'll just be ziram, thiram, and ferbam because there are proposed drastic changes, and there's actually a proposed interim decision, or PID for short, with regards to these fungicides. And they will have an impact on fruit growers within the region. So first of all, there's the proposed interim decision for ziram is cancellation of all uses. So that means whatever you use ziram for, whether it's disease management or to use it to help with necrotic leaf blotch on your golden delicious, you won't be able to use it. And so this will be really unfortunate if we lose this chemical. The other ones are for thiram. So there'll be cancellation of all non-seed treatment uses on strawberries, peaches, and ornamentals for thiram. And then cancellation of all uses on apple, pear, citrus, mango, and cranberries for ferbam. And so the comment period's currently open until July 1st, right now until I believe like 11:59 p.m. And so a disease, basically an update went up about this on Monday this week, and hopefully Dawn could link it in the summary so that people have direct access to it, because it provides directions of how to access the website where you can put the comment and how to navigate the site, because I gave bulleted directions of what to do. As far as if you're listening and thinking, well, what does an EPA want to see in a comment? First, the EPA does have a website that talks about commenting on EPA dockets, this is a docket in question as far as the ziram, thiram, and ferbam. And so it gives you some helpful tips. So this is linked in the article, so I recommend people reviewing this as far as when they're composing their thoughts. But I added some bullet points for folks to consider when they're developing their comment. You have to be thinking about, what do you use ziram for? So, ziram, for it's controlling diseases when there are favorable conditions throughout the season, when chemical intervention is necessary. Also, this is a broad spectrum fungicide, and we always preach about fungicide resistance management. And there aren't many broad spectrum fungicides to sort of aid with this aspect of fungicide resistance management. So losing ziram, especially for apples, would be a big deal. Ziram is important for, protecting, pome and stone fruits from many fungal diseases. And also, it's always good to include a potential estimate of possible crop loss or how much more expensive it is going to cost you to control disease if you lose this fungicide. So, because the EPA do respond, they want to see dollar amounts, they want to see figures, tangible numbers. And so it's important to be as detailed as possible with regards to these comments, not just a 2 sentences like, this is important for my operation and it would stink if we lost it. Okay, that's a comment, but that's really not going to go far for the EPA as far as for them to make a decision. You want to give them enough information, enough data in order for them to really evaluate the decisions they have on the table, and in order to determine whether or not they're going to move ahead with those decisions. One thing it's really important to note here in this, right now, the EPA is going to be going forward with this unless they receive a significant number of comments with regards to these fungicides. So just remember, ziram, cancellation, all uses of ziram. You will not be able to use it. And the same thing for thiram as well, because people are using thiram as a broad spectrum fungicide and for other uses as well. And I know it's being used in strawberries. It's being very important in strawberries. And so, don't also expect other people to do it. It's important to put your voice to it as far as how it's going to affect your operation. I will, maybe in the next update that we do, I'll talk more about Captan. Right now, I'm in the process of trying to get an extension. I'm trying to band together with other researchers to ask for the EPA an extension for the comment period for Captan. There are some proposed changes, not so much cancellation, it's usage patterns for Captan. How much you can use a season, how much you can use in one application, how it is to be applied. So this, again, these will impact fruit growers in the area. So it's important to pay attention to these things and to make your voice heard, and don't have the mindset of, well, someone else will do it. Well, it's important that as many voices as possible are heard about this. So this is a big one that's coming up for the comment period for these broad spectrum fungicides. So again, I just want to refer to you back to the update that was posted this week that Don will include in the little summary for this episode. And also there's additional links in there because this was also written about in December by one of the Penn State Extension educators, Megan Luke, where she went through even more details about the proposed interim decision with regards to these fungicides. I'm just giving you very kind of broad brushstrokes of what the vibe is for each of these fungicides. So that's a story about the EPA and those fungicides. Now shifting gears to talk about what is the disease of the moment that folks should be thinking about right now. Well, we are in bitter rot time. So bitter rot is a fungus that affects apples primarily, is what we're seeing in the mid-Atlantic. The bitter rot fungus, it causes rot on fungus. Now, bitter rot, I'm not talking about bitter pit here, which is the calcium disorder, but bitter rot. The bitter rot fungus can also go to leaves, and you may have heard glomerella leaf spot. We don't have that disease. We don't have the species that causes that disease in Pennsylvania. It's primarily the fruit rot disease we worry about. So if you grow Honeycrisp, you know what bitter rot is. So the bitter rot fungus is very tricky in the sense of when the spore lands on the fruit, it germinates, and then it will cause infection. And after it causes infection, I mean, it penetrates the skin, it goes through a dormant period for an unspecified amount of time. When it's in that dormant period, so the spore is anchored in the fruit, the infection is there, but it's not moving, fungicides aren't very effective. So you need to make sure, in order to stop this pathogen, to stop this disease, that the fungicides are on the fruit first. So when the disease conditions are present and the germination starts and that potential ability for the fungus to be able to anchor in is disrupted, the fungicides need to be on the fruit before the environmental conditions. So what are those environmental conditions? Really warm weather, which is what we're in right now, and wetting events, prolonged rain periods. So it seems that this fungus, the Calototricum genus, it needs at least 12 hours of leaf wetness. So this is something to keep in mind when you're thinking about applying your fungicides. And it's important to have, that's why I always say it's always better to have your fungicides on before the wetting event, not after. Also, as you're going into that wetting event, be thinking about, how old are the fungicides on my fruit? When was the last time I sprayed? And is there anything left? And so it's really important to make sure that you've got a fresh coating or near fresh coating of protection on those fruit in order to limit the disease. So what fungicides are useful? Captan. Aim for 3 pounds to the acre of Captan. You can use it by itself or tank mix it with a stronger chemical, especially if there's prolonged wetting periods. So you could tank mix it with Aprovia, which is a frac group 7. This is a 30-day PHI, so be mindful of how far your harvest window is. Another product is Omega. This is a unique frac group 29. This has a 28-day PHI. If you use Omega by itself, you need to use it at the highest rate, which is 13.8 fluid ounces. If you're tank mixing it with Captan, you can drop it in half. You can use basically the half of that rate. The 3 remaining products that are useful all have frac 11s, the strobilurins. That's Flynn Extra. It has a 14-day PHI, Luna Sensation, which has a frac 7 and 11, and that has a 14-day PHI. And spoiler alert, it is the frac 11 in Luna Sensation that is doing the control. Frac 7 doesn't touch the bitter rot fungus. And lastly, Maravon, which is frac 7 and 11. And again, in this case, it is the frac 11, the paraclostrobin, that is doing the controlling of the rot. I usually recommend saving a Maravon spray for late in the season. So right before harvest, applying a Maravon spray, especially for any fruit that you intend on keeping in storage for a bit, because this will also give you some post-harvest rot control as well. You can apply Topsin. It's not the greatest chemical, but if you're tank mixing with Captan, you'll get some decent control in general, mainly because of the Captan. Topsin's also good for sooty blotch and fly speck, as are the rest of these fungicides. But you're going to get control with Captan all the across the board for both sooty blotch and fly speck, and also for bitter rot. But bitter rot right now is the priority, just because of this latent period. Ziram is still available, so you can still use Ziram this season. So if you are running out of Captan, or you don't want to use Captan for whatever reason, you can use Ziram, but use it at the 4 pounds to the acre rate and add a spreader sticker with it, because you'll be able to kind of limit the ability for the product to be washed off. And lastly, the last thing I want to say is the use of the phosphorus acid-based products like Prophyte or Rampart. In my research, I've noticed during moderate to low disease pressure years, I didn't see a difference in the season as far as harvest at the end, evaluating rots at the end of the season. Where I did notice a difference is rots showing up in storage. So there was significantly less bitter rot showing up in storage when I was using the phosphorus acid-based products like Prophyte or Rampart. Now, a word of caution with those products. These products have potassium in it. And I know, and Shan could probably speak to this, potassium can mess with your calcium. So for apples that are really sensitive to bitter pit, you may want to be cautious about, like Honeycrisp, about using these products to control for bitter rot on these apples, just because of the power of the potassium influencing things to go out of whack with regards to calcium. So, and the last thing, as far as organic management goes, so it can be pretty tricky, and really sulfur is your best bet, unfortunately. And I know there can be issues with sulfur as far as using it on hot days and above 80 degrees. I'm testing this in a couple different apple blocks, different varieties, to see how durable this view is about sulfur. So I'm using sulfur at 6 pounds to the acre all season long. And I'm just seeing, like, will using it really in hot weather, how much will this muck up the fruit finish? So we'll see. I mean, this is always the sort of the line that's always used, but for organic folks, sulfur really is the best bet for managing. We've tested a lot of different products, and they just don't hold up by themselves. So you do need something a little stronger. So with that, I think that's it for me today. So just for folks, just like I said, please visit that Fruit Times article that was sent out earlier this week about the EPA fungicides. Has a lot of good information there. And please submit a comment, because the more the better. And again, we have until July 1st for those comments.
Cool. I will put the link to that in the episode description so that way folks can do it. And if we do another episode next week, I will put it in there next week too.
Okay,
All the
fantastic.
way up, all the way up until July 1. So, Dr. Krawcheck, if you would like to go next, then you're up.
Thank you, Don.
Mhm.
We are in this period of the season when we should be able to just sit and enjoy, when at the same time it is also a period to make plans for the rest of the season based on what happened so far. The reason I'm saying is, and I mentioned this during last podcast, this is a good time to evaluate the effectiveness of whatever management for the insects was applied earlier on. For some insects, like plum curculio, European apple sawfly, there is really not a lot that can be done other than deciding, yeah, I was effective, my activity did a good job, or no, it didn't work for me. But for some, this is a time to kind of reassess what was done and plan for the future. The one that people really need to plan are oriental fruit moth, codling moth, and maybe scale. If the oriental fruit moth program was effective during the first generation, then right now you shouldn't be able really to find any signs of oriental fruit moth. Unfortunately, we have seen a lot of peach blocks with a lot of flagging on the top of growing shoots. Again, those are branches. The trees will still compensate for this. Nothing happened. But this is a good symptom, good sign that something did not work, and oriental fruit moth is around and will be around for basically until mid-October. So if you don't see anything, well, it's like, okay, we did something good, we control oriental fruit moth, shouldn't have a problem. If you see signs, those flagging on the peaches, or actually you can also see injury on fruit, both peaches and apples, then it means that there is another 3 more generations of oriental fruit moth, and we really have to do something to avoid having those larvae in the fruit at harvest. Trapping is the easiest way to deal with it. You can't cut it off. Well, if you have 1 or 2 trees, then yes, you can cut it off, but usually we're talking about 1 or 200 of acres of trees, so it's usually slightly more difficult. But if you know that there is oriental fruit moth in the orchard and the first generation did not, in the first generation management practices didn't control it, be ready for the rest of the season. Similar situation is with codling moth, which actually right now is in the tail end of the first generation flight. 10 years ago, we would say, oh, this is already, the first generation is over, and we waiting for the second generation. Unfortunately, that's not the case. If you look at the newer model tells you that the second generation codling moth is flying. Well, it is still first generation that is flying, and this is very important. So again, I will go back to the trapping. Put the traps out and really adjust what you read at newer recommendation site to what is actually happening in your orchard. And traps are the easiest way to do this and the most reliable way to actually see what is happening in the orchard. when I said 10 years ago, it seems like development of codling moth was very simple. The flight starts during the bloom. The 250-degree days was at first cover, which was usually 2 weeks after the bloom. The second spray at 550-degree days was at second cover, and then we were done. And this was usually done by the end of May. Well, in the last 8, 10 years, 5 for sure, we see the very extended flight of the first generation codling moth. The flight can actually still be very high in the late June. And even if the model tells you that, oh, we are at the beginning of the second generation and nothing is needed, but you're catching a lot of moths in the traps, and I see data from orchards across the state that actually still catching some, then you know that codling moth of the first generation is still flying. And if they can find a trap, they can find each other, they can mate, and females will lay eggs. Additional treatments, insecticides are needed if you're catching a lot, and a lot will be 10 plus. And again, this is not a scientific number, it's basically assessment. Then you probably should do something, because otherwise they will be larvae in the fruit. Right now, you also can find actually injured fruit in the orchard. I mean, we've been in the orchard this last few days, and we have no problem to find codling moth injured fruit. Apples, codling moth does not go to stone fruit. They are very easy to spot. The injury is small right now, but easy to spot, especially when you look at the greener cultivars. And there is not a lot of red on the fruit anyway right now. So you can see them very easily. The good part is these injuries, the injured fruit at this moment, that are injured at this moment, they will not be on the trees during the harvest. They will drop. But if we don't know about it, if we don't take care, that if we don't realize that we have a problem or potential problem later on, we might miss it. So put the traps, check the fruit, make assessment or reassessment what needs to be done later on during the season. Again, if you use any of the diamides, and again, I probably say it every podcast, but I will say it again. Altacor, Exirel, Verdeplim, Voliam, Besich, Mimecto, all of them are diamide insecticides. If you use those products for the controlling codling moth during the first generation, please do not use any one of them for the control of the second generation. If you use delegate, then don't use delegate for the second generation. Switch to diamides. This is important. We do have those cases of resistance, and it seems that it's not going away, even if growers are actually trying to control the insects with the granulosis virus, with the sperlep, those products. But make sure that you're rotating your materials between generations, not between the sprays, but between generations of the insects. So again, if you see the injury, don't panic, don't freak out right now, oh, I am in big trouble. No, we have the 3 generations of oriental fruit moth to come, and we have at least 1, probably 2 generations of codling moth to come, and those will be the one that eventually can be found on during the harvest. But the injured fruit, the fruit that are injured right now, they will be on the ground. So don't worry about it. Just make sure that you go to the orchard, look for it, and then you prepare what to do later on. This is a problem that can be corrected if you know that you have it. The worst part is that you assume that something works or your program works, and then you will be caught by surprise why I'm getting 20, 30, 40 codling moth per trap per week later on. And then it might be too late. So just time to re-evaluation of what is going on in the orchard. Another pest that actually right now is worth to look for are the San Jose scale. We're done with the first generation. And now, if you find any sign of any scale on the fruit or on the freshly grown shoots, it means that San Jose scale and white peach scale on peaches were not controlled effectively, which also means you will have to control them again later on to protect fruit. One thing to remember is that San Jose scale likes to develop on the growing terminals and on the fruit. But San Jose scale attacks apples, but also attacks all stone fruit. The white peach scale does not affect apples or pears. It's only on peaches. And white peach scale really prefer to feed on the older wood. This is something completely different. However, they will go to developing fruit. So looking at fruit right now will also give you the idea if you were effective in controlling white peach scale on peaches or nectarines or apricots. I mean, apricots are ready to harvest, or some people already started it. Another insect similar to this that is really worthy right now to look for is woolly apple aphids. I mentioned a few weeks ago that some people already started to seeing. Now is the time really to look for it. If you start seeing any symptoms of woolly apple aphid, it means this is the individual that are coming from the roots, from the soil. Nothing controlled them. And it might be worth it to still think about Movento. I will still not use diazinon, but Movento at 9 ounces is should still be effective. What else can be evaluated right now or assessed right now are mites, European red mites. Using oil, using Agrimec, using Savi, using Zial early on. Probably people should not see mites, but with the hot weather coming in the next 10 days, mites just love a hot, dry weather. And if there are any mites that are on the trees, I believe in the end of next week, they will be very easy to spot and very easy to decide if another acaricide treatment is needed. Or maybe if biological control will kick in or the phytosaid mites, then maybe not. But again, this depends what the history is, what people have seen in the past. The pests to look for are actually Japanese beetle, which should start showing up or maybe already started showing up. I mean, I spent some time in the orchard the last few days, but have not seen them yet. Saying this, Don is showing me that he have already seen them. This is the time for them to start showing up. Remember that when the ground is very dry, they have a hard time to getting out from their overwintering sites. They are in the ground. But after any rain, and the rain can be even a storm, then the population will probably, that's the time to look for them. Within day 2 after any rain event, it will be easy to spot them, easy to see them. Another insect that we really don't talk a lot in Pennsylvania, but is very important for people north, south, and west from us is apple maggot. And this is the time when apple maggot will start flying. I don't know really if anyone in Pennsylvania is monitoring for apple maggot. We don't have any traps for apple maggot. We don't see injured fruit yet. But this is something that can actually show up and can destroy a lot of crop. I mean, if you talk with the growers from Michigan or New York, they will tell you that apple maggot is the most important pest for them. And this is time to start looking for it. Unfortunately, for this one, we still have to use traps. And other traps, they are effective traps, red sphere or yellow sticky cards that can be baited with the attractants for apple maggot. And traps will be much more effective in detecting the presence or showing you the absence of the apple maggots than trying to find them visually. Because even if the fruit are infested, the eggs are laid under the skin, and it's very difficult to visually find them, at least until the injury and the whole process is very, very advanced. So those really the updates, what is happening right now. Some of this is repeat from the previous, some of them is for the future, but that's really what we're dealing with at the moment. Again, OFM is starting the second generation right now, but again, assessing what you see from the first generation will be the best indicator how important this pest is in your orchard. Codling moth injuries are showing up. Woolly apple aphids is showing up on the trees. Mites will show up probably after this hot spell that is ahead of us. And well, that's the summary. That's all I have. Unless you have some question, Dan, and I appreciate that you said that you already have seen Japanese beetle, because I've been in Lancaster yesterday and in Adams County this week earlier on, and I did not see them. But again, it might be location, it might be place
Yeah.
to place.
It was only in one orchard that I visited the other day, but yeah, they were there. So
Yeah. Okay, so they started, and especially if you have any plum trees, any grapes, they really like a magnet for Japanese beetle. So that's the place to look for them first. They will get to apple, they will get to peaches, nectarines, apricots, but plums and grapes are really the magnets where they will go first.
cool. Thanks, Greg. Sean, last but not least.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks, Don. Today I just want to talk about a few things, the general state of where the trees are and how the trees look, how this thinning season has gone. So reports from different parts of the state in both in Biglerville and in central Pennsylvania, in southeast, the eastern part as well. I've seen different varieties being overthinned to quite a bit of extent overthin of many varieties like Kela and Fuji. And I don't know how widespread it is. This is just with the orchards I'm doing some work in and visiting. So I think we were very cautious with thinning this year. Sorry, we were very aggressive with thinning this year because last year we didn't get the thinning that we wanted with last year's season, but this year we had very good weather for thinning, and not just one window for thinning, but rather 2 to 3 windows, 2 to 3 good windows for thinning in most of Pennsylvania. And if you'd notice that we had the right temperatures, but also we had uh, somewhat cloudy, cool weather days mostly after that thinning window, which could have increased the thinning efficacy of the thinning sprays that we sprayed. The other issues also could be that in years where we have a huge heavy crop load, like in 2023, what happens in the 2024 is we do have a heavy June drop in different regions as well. Usually, in crops which have a heavy crop load in the previous year, the next year, we tend to see that even though there's been thinning, good thinning, we'll see even some more fruit drop off during June drop. The third point I wanted to mention is there were some very high carbohydrate deficit days during, not necessarily during the thinning period, but during that time where there was some natural thinning that also happened without any thinners, just because we were in a heavy carbohydrate deficit. So these are some of the reasons why we could have seen some over thinning in some blocks. Especially, I'm seeing this in Gala. But also not limited to Gala, but in Fuji and Honeycrisp, etc. So that is one point. The second topic I wanted to talk about was Honeycrisp nutrient management. So before talking about that, I'll talk about soil sampling and leaf sampling, and then go into specifically Honeycrisp nutrients and what to look for. So first is the soil sampling. So I just wanted to make it clear that, the soil sample results are only as good as the sample that you provide for soil analysis. And this is just a recap. I know a lot of you do this sampling pretty regularly, but just to provide a recap of soil samples, I would suggest using at least anywhere from 15 to 20 subsamples from different parts of your orchard. And in one sample, I would suggest not to have an area more than 5 acres of that's covered. And ideally you want different samples for different regions. Like, I would suggest not to mix sampling from lowland areas to upland or highland areas, because they really can have drastically different nutrient status. And the other thing that is very commonly seen is sometimes we oversample the upper part of the soil, like from 0 to 6 inches, and we the soil below is underrepresented, the 6 to 12 inches soil. So ideally you want to use like a soil probe or a soil tube that you can get like an even sample from all of that. But just something to keep in mind when you are using a shovel or, for example, something like that to take your soil sample, that make sure not to overrepresent the top 6 inches of that soil sample. And then you can take about 20 of these samples, mix them, and then have a composite sample sent for soil analysis. Having mentioned that, doing a soil analysis, especially every other year, I think is good practice. However, it doesn't give you the exact nutrient status of the tree, because there's quite a few factors involved in that, with nutrient uptake, which the soil sample does not measure, the tree health, and all of that. So ideally, every other year, you also want to do a leaf analysis. And this is actually a right time to start with leaf analysis. Anywhere from mid-June to mid-July to the end of July, I think, is a good time to take leaves for sampling for leaf analysis. So for doing the leaf analysis, usually on average, I think it's suggested to take samples from 10 trees. So you select 10 trees in one particular block. I also forgot to mention that when you have your sampling, try to have it from one variety in one rootstock, especially, and as one block and one sample, because it can vary, especially the leaf analysis, it can vary based on different varieties and different rootstocks. So especially in blocks where you have problem varieties like Honeycrisp and things like that, it's ideal if you take sampling from the same variety in the same rootstock. And so you take around a total of around anywhere from 50 to 100 leaves, around 5 to 10 leaves per tree for about 10 trees. Combine that, and that's your composite sample for leaf analysis. And ideally, yes, from now until mid-July, anytime you can take these samples. So where do you sample the leaves? That's also a good point. So somewhere in the mid region, somewhere in the middle region is good to take. And usually if you look at new shoots, new spurts of growth, you take leaves from the middle of that growth, not from the top, not from the bottom, but from the mid section of that. It can either be the spur leaf growth, or it can be from like a vegetative shoot. But you can take it from both of these, and around 5 to 10 leaves per tree, to about 50 to 100 leaves from that set of 10 trees spread out around your block. Ideally, if you want to compare your soil and leaf analysis, it's good to take these samples somewhat close to each other. So if you take a sample from one soil site, take also the leaves from that site. So that will help you understand how things are in the soil as well as in the trees. So that will give some clues as to where where to pinpoint if there's any nutritional issue. The other point I want to mention is if you have no problems, every other year measurements might be enough. But if you have any nutritional problem whatsoever, it is important to do, or if you suspect any nutritional issue, it's important to do these measurements hopefully every year, both the soil and the leaf analysis. And and yes, John can ask any questions if I've missed anything or if he has anything to add. But before handing it over to Don, I just want to talk about nutrient levels. Most probably when you get your nutrient levels back from the testing, you usually get a standard rates for apples. So I am now pulling up the Penn State apple leaf test interpretive nutrient levels for plant analyses. And if we look at apple, specifically, I'm going to focus on nitrogen, potassium, and calcium. So if you look at what nitrogen, it says, normal is 1.8% of dry weight of the leaf. I'm talking about the leaf tissue. And the high is 2.81, excessive is 3. Similarly, phosphorus, high is 0.31. Excessive is 0.37%. Potassium, normal is 1.2%, high is 2%. And so the reason I bring up this is because for Honeycrisp, the rates are slightly different from the regular rates of ideal rates of these nutrients. And that is sometimes not specifically mentioned in the test results that you get back. It depends on where you're getting the test results from. But specifically for Honeycrisp, there's been a 5-year study that was done by Lai Lang at Cornell that showed that the nitrogen and ideal nitrogen and potassium levels for Honeycrisp is quite a bit lower than what is required for Gala and many other varieties. For example, in nitrogen, ideal nitrogen percent is 2% or lower for Honeycrisp. Whereas if you look at the regular test results, you'll see that anywhere from 1.8 to a high of, it's categorized as high only if it's greater than 2.8%. With Honeycrisp, you really don't want more than 2% of dry weight of nitrogen. Similarly, for potassium, anywhere from 1.2 to 1.8% of dry weight is what is ideal for potassium for Honeycrisp. Whereas in other tests, it's only classified as high if it's 2% or greater. So usually Honeycrisp requires lesser nitrogen and potassium levels as compared to most other cultivars. And the ratio of nitrogen to calcium and the potassium to calcium is what is more important than looking at exactly a particular nutrient level or calcium level. Because if that ratio is lopsided, then it is difficult for the plant to uptake calcium. The reason is because potassium interferes with the uptake of calcium, like Kari mentioned, and it basically displaces calcium when it's being uptaken. And so which is why we want to regulate nitrogen and potassium, especially nitrogen. You want to be very careful when you apply nitrogen for Honeycrisp, especially in problem blocks, because that can have much bigger impact than your calcium sprays. So it is still ideal to do calcium sprays for Honeycrisp, about 5 to 6 sprays spread about 1 to 2 weeks apart. I think people who are doing those calcium sprays probably started about 1 or 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, sometimes even 3 weeks ago, and you do those sprays every week or every other week, and for 5 or 6 sprays of calcium. And of course, I would suggest that the best product to use for bitter pit management in Honeycrisp still remains calcium chloride. That's not really because of any magic that calcium chloride does. The only reason why I suggest calcium chloride is because it has the highest percentage of elemental calcium in the product as compared to many other products. And so it's just math where you're applying more elemental calcium, which is why calcium chloride is suggested. And you want 5 to 6 different sprays of calcium chloride for bitter pit management in Honeycrisp. and you want to take care of your nitrogen and potassium levels for Honeycrisp as well. That is all I have to say today.
Cool. Thanks, Sean. I'll wind up linking the Ag Analytical Services Lab in the podcast description, so that way folks can send their leaf or soil samples up to Ag Analytics. So
Yeah,
um,
sounds good. I want to quickly mention, so if anybody is interested to do this testing from Penn State, all you have to do is to just type Penn State Ag Analytical Service. That Don is going to have the link as well. So just click on that, and it gives you a procedure to conduct those to take those samples and then submit, and then they'll be able to give you results as well.
It's really simple. I will say most of your local extension offices do have soil testing kits available, readily available. I know my office usually has a couple dozen on hand at any given time. So in case you're doing soil samples, we've always got a soil sample kit available. Yeah, that's all I've got to add about that. Anyone have anything else? Cool. Well, alrighty then. I'll let everyone get back to their rest of their day, and I'll get this edited and get this into folks' hands or into their ears, I guess. And thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for coming on and giving your updates. And say goodbye, everybody.
See you later.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.